a show created by the fans for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Hello, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast, your Ohio State versus Northwestern game day preview. I am Tyler Johnson, joined by Mr. Jordan Dalton. JD, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, ready to talk about another lower tier Big Ten football game, getting us ready for the end of the season here, but pretty excited. Going to be a cool atmosphere, I think, this week.
Yeah, there is, of course, a lot to talk about before we get to any of it, guys. As a reminder, please just take a quick second, drop a like on the video if you would, please. Again, really helps that YouTube algorithm grow, push the show out to viewers that have not yet seen the show, but also subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. 2 shows per week, weekly Ohio State football content. You want to make sure you don't miss it. And if you can't catch the video version of the show, it will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, JD, you did mention it. It's going to be I would say an interesting environment for Ohio State, not because it's going to be a ruckus crowd or anything like that, but Ohio State and Northwestern will be played at Wrigley Field. So there have been pictures of it. What are your thoughts on this environment? So real quick, I'm just going to give mine, and I know I'm not the only Buckeye fan that feels this way. I think to me, I understand games have been played there before, but I'll tell you what, man, when I see the end zone set up the way it is, it's just, you're a bad pass away from a serious knee injury. Now, again, you could say that anytime. Anywhere you play, there's a risk of injury. The way the stadium looks, like the way that the field is spread out onto Wrigley Field, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit worried about it. And personally, I'd rather play at their current stadium. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the reason they decided to go with Wrigley was just because the current practice field stadium setup they have while they're building their new stadium just wouldn't hold enough people. And they're expecting, people to make the drive from Ohio to this game. So they wanted a bigger stadium. I think Wrigley Field's a cool environment, a cool place to have a football game. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on there's not really any room on those end zones. So if you have a deep ball to one of the receivers and they're trying to make a catch in the corner of the end zone, like there's not a lot of wiggle room for injury between the end of the goal line or the end of the end zone there and then the wall. It's probably I wouldn't even say there's 5 feet there. So
yeah,
it's pretty tight. But I think the stadium setup looks really cool. I know Yankee Stadium's had some football games. That Wrigley's had football games in the past. It's been done. So I'm excited to see how it looks on TV and it's just a unique thing. You don't really see a lot in college football. So hoping nobody gets injured, for both sides. You don't want to see anybody get hurt, but don't want to see anybody get hurt because of the way the stadium's set up. That would just be an avoidable injury for a lot of reasons. So hopefully it just goes well and we can enjoy this cool atmosphere this week.
Yeah, I hope it does too, man. I guess my only counter is, like, when you think about, like, where could Ohio State and Northwestern play, one of my family members brought this up to me. Why don't they just play at Soldier Field? Like, why don't they play? Like, I guess that's just my thought too, because, like, why not play on an actual football field? And again, it's not. It wouldn't be far, and I guarantee you they'd probably pack out that stadium. And if anything, Northwestern, like, you'd be getting even more fans, which is even more revenue potentially. So I guess I get it. I mean, it is gonna look. I'll say this: it will look cool. My thought is just like, I mean, honestly, you could easily just play this at Soldier Field, but it is what it is. We've talked. I just want to get that off my chest because, again, I know I'm not the only Buckeye fan that's probably thinking, like, hey, why are we playing on a baseball field for this game? But talking about Northwestern now. So last year, and again, I'm talking last year for a second, Northwestern last year just kind of surprised everyone. I mean, let's be honest. They fired Pat Fitzgerald after the scandal that happened there. And they kind of surprised some people. I mean, they beat Minnesota, they beat Maryland, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, even Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl. I mean, pretty good. Like you look at it, like that's pretty solid. I mean, especially for Northwestern. This year, they kind of came back down to earth a little bit. I mean, they're currently 4-5. When you see this team, one thing I will say, and this probably said it to you as well, they're not the most talented team by any means. I think that's pretty obvious. But one thing is that they are going to play hard. Like David Brong has these guys playing hard, and he's kind of a cool story, man. Like you get fought, he becomes interim head coach, turns things around. Really, it has these guys. I mean, not only bowl eligible last year, winning a bowl game, and now he's the head football coach at Northwestern. So when you look at this team, what do you see?
I see a team that can score. They haven't scored under 20 points since their first game of the season, which they won against Miami of Ohio. So they're consistently putting up points. You know, they had a really close game against Duke early on in the season. And then they played Indiana tough, but Indiana's offense is just so good. I don't think they could have compete firepower wise with them. And then they are coming off their last game was actually against Purdue as well. So they had a bye week coming into this game, and they took Purdue to overtime and got a win. So they're not a great team, but like you said, they're going to play tough. And they are putting points up, and that's half the battle, right? So, yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway.
Yeah, I think for me, when I see this team, it looks like it really started to click when they made the switch at quarterback, is what I'm seeing. So you come into the year with Mike Wright as your starting quarterback. He did not play very well. I mean, by any means, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and on the ground, like he was a rushing threat. He did have 1 rushing touchdown. Clearly, something wasn't clicking there. They make the change to Jack Losh at quarterback, and I mean, he's not lighting it up by any means, but he does have 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He also has a rushing touchdown. He's ran for 200 yards, so clearly they like to involve him in the run game. But one thing that I will say, JD, about these quarterbacks, they're not going to really stretch the ball down the field. I mean, when your average per target is 5.8 yards, I mean, to me, that is just that's pretty terrible. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, that's pretty bad. So, but when you look at this team, they are going to play hard first and foremost. And I think even though they aren't great record-wise, because they're not, this is the type of game you kind of have to be careful about if you're Ohio State. The reason being, next weekend is going to set up probably potentially a top 5 matchup against Indiana at the Horseshoe. So they have to be ready to go in this game. Just the biggest thing I would say is, again, it's at a neutral location, even though it's still in Illinois. Like it's not technically, I would say a home game. It's more of a neutral site game. I'm expecting, honestly, we might have more Buckeye fans there than Northwestern fans. I don't really think that's too far fetched. They don't run the ball very well, 3.7 yards a carry as a team. I mean, that's not good. Other than that, they have some receivers. I mean, you look at AJ Henning and Bryce Kurtz. Those are their guys in the passing game, and they account for pretty much all their yardage. So I think if you just contain those guys, and I'm looking at Denzel Burke and Davis Enigmanosin, you just contain those guys, man. I mean, Northwestern honestly won't have a chance in this game, is what I see. Because again, they're not running the ball very well. I mean, their leading rusher has 387 yards on 97 carries. He does have 6 touchdowns, but he's only averaging 4 yards a carry. So I think this is a game, to be honest, Ohio State should win pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be similar to the Purdue game. They have to just take care of the football, make big plays when they present themselves, and I think the score will take care of itself. I don't think this is a game that we should be worried about, but you can get caught looking ahead to Indiana, and Indiana's on a bye week this week. So more than likely they're not going to drop in the rankings. So if Ohio State can get a good win here, we are staring down a top 5 matchup next week. So just don't want to sleepwalk through this game. It's going to be a weird environment. You're playing in a baseball stadium. I think there is going to be a big draw, though. Because of that reason, I think a lot of Ohio State fans are going to make that trip just because of you kind of get a twofer. You get to watch the Buckeyes play, and you get to watch them play in a historic stadium. So it's kind of a cool thing, and I don't think it's going to affect the way that Northwestern plays. I think weather's going to be good. Ohio State's going to do their thing, and it's going to be a pretty quick W in and out.
Yeah, really hope so. And again, I pretty much agree with all that. I think one thing I found really interesting, the games Northwestern has lost, Jack Losh has thrown for only over 100 yards once in the games they've lost. So that's something really to keep an eye on. And he's actually led them in rushing twice. So they want to get him involved in the run game. So that's going to be, I think, the Buckeyes' biggest thing on the defensive side of the ball. Don't let the quarterback run game kill you. And I think this is a good preview for next weekend as well, because Curtis Ruark can move around a little bit. Rourke. Curtis Rourke, yeah. Wow. I do that every time. But the Buckeyes' biggest headache has been the quarterback run game. That's what they have to make sure they defend with Northwestern. Just don't let Jack Losh beat you with his legs. Make him beat you with his arm, because he has been very inconsistent doing that this year. What do you want to see from the Buckeyes in this game?
Like I said earlier, keep the turnovers to 0. We saw it last week with Purdue, and it really set the tone for the offense. Will Howard was in rhythm the whole game, and then we were able to get the run game going. So I would like to see those things just carry on the continuity of the offensive line, getting those guys ready and gelling as much as possible for this home stretch of the season. And then I would just like to see that rotation on the defensive line. And we've been talking about it. We're kind of seeing more and more of it as the season's gone on. But we're coming to a point in the season where we're knocking down the door on 12 games now for the regular season, plus however many we're going to end up having postseason. Hopefully we end up playing all 16 or so games. And we're going to need those fresh legs. So I would like to see that continued rotation on the defense. I think the offense has done a really good job of rotating receivers, especially as of late. We're seeing a lot of guys get involved. Brandon Enos has gotten involved a lot more in the offense, which has been really nice to see. Carnell Tate, Abuka, and JJ Smith have all contributed really well. So I would just like to see what we've been doing, and please God, no injuries going into next week, because we need to be at full strength for this Indiana game.
Yep, absolutely, man. I think for me, again, turnovers is the biggest one. Let's see if Will Howard can go back-to-back games without turn over the football. He did that earlier this year against lesser competition. Let's see him do it back-to-back Big Ten games. I know people will say, well, Big Ten competition is low. It's still conference games, and I want to see if he can go back-to-back games without any turnovers. Continue to spread the ball around on the offensive side. I think they'll continue to do that. I think they're going to make an effort to give Carnell Tate the ball on Saturday. Homecoming for him. Going back to Illinois, and obviously we don't need to get into it. Been through a lot, and I think they're gonna try and make an effort to really involve him and just give him the homecoming he deserves after everything he's gone through. With just family. So I really think we're going to see that on the defensive side of the ball. Continue rotation on the defensive line. Tyleik Williams, it looks like, will be back. don't play him a ton of snaps. It's not needed. So just keep rotating. I think also the big thing for me, generate some pressure, please, on the quarterback. I know we're starting to see more of it. Keep building on that. Keep getting pressure, especially on Jack Losh. Keep him in the pocket. If you do that, I think you're going to be just fine.
Yep.
But JD, Ohio State in this game is a 28.5-point favorite. First off, do you think the Buckeyes cover that spread? And then what is your score prediction?
I think they're going to cover. I think it's going to be a pretty similar game to the Purdue game. I don't think we shut out two Big Ten opponents in back-to-back weeks. I think we're going to give up some points. And we really caught a break with Purdue missing those 2 field goals. So I think Northwestern's, just because they've been able to score this year and have some semblance of an offense, I think they'll score 10. And I think we cover. So I'm going to go with 35-10 as my score.
Okay. All right. I like it.
It doesn't track. 30. What's the
28.5?
28.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll do 42. 42-10.
Okay.
So we do cover.
So I'm kind of with you. I mean, you shut out back-to-back Big Ten opponents. That would be absolutely insane. A lot of good momentum going into next week. I don't think it happens, though, either. I just don't. You mentioned it. Northwestern does not score, it seems like, below 20. And I know this is the best team they've played so far this year, but that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go – I think they do get 10 points as well. But I do think Ohio State's going to cover in this game. Funny enough, I think we're actually going to end up kicking a field goal for once. I have 45-10. I think Ohio State is just – I think Ryan Day is going to have these guys ready to go and not looking ahead because, again, that's the most important thing. We see it too many times in college football. You can't look ahead. And I think he'll have these guys ready to play. It's a cool environment. It is a really cool environment they're going to be playing in. Going to be a little odd. I think when we see it on TV, it's going to be like, well, this is kind of odd. This is just odd. So I am excited about this game. And again, it's a really good opportunity. Get a lot more good momentum going to set up, hopefully, what's a top 5 showdown next weekend. So as we're wrapping things up, man, anything else you want to add?
I just want to say I predicted the shutout last week. I was only 3 points off on my score prediction. I predicted 42-0 and ended up being 45-0. So I was really hoping Fielding would miss that kick and I could be correct. But no, I'm excited. It should be a fun game. Hopefully see some points put on the board and everybody gets out healthy. That's the big goal for this week.
Awesome. Yep, I agree with that, man. And talk about getting close on a score prediction. But guys, again, thank you so much for tuning in this Ohio State versus Northwestern game day preview. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you're brand new, two shows per week, Ohio State football content. You want to make sure you don't miss any of it. Also, audio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We will talk to you guys all again soon. As always, go Buckeyes.